Okay, well, here's where we're at. I hooked up the throttle again. I also installed the thermostat, and I also reinstalled the timing belt on the speaker pump. It's a bit of a trick, weaving it around to get it out onto that cogged wheel, but it gets there. And I actually slipped it on just using a plastic tool. The mark for the speaker pump, I don't know if you can see it, but it's in that blotch of faded white paint. Might have been, maybe it's tan paint, I don't know, but it's in there. And it's lined right up on the mark on the pump, which is, well, I'm not doing a good job, which is right there. And of course your crank should be pointing on the eye mark, which it is. So on the eye mark. I also installed a oil filter, and I redid the cam cover nuts because I didn't like the way that this gasket was protruding, but it's not a precision fit. So things are shaping up a little bit. I am going to be picking up my tires. I had the tires dismounted from the rims. I'm going to be recycling those tires. They're actually would be very good for a car that is a show car. I shouldn't say a show car. Kind of a car that doesn't get driven because they're 50-year-old tires, but they're in phenomenal condition, I think. Now that is probably an oxymoron, doesn't make sense, but some place like a museum or somebody who needs tires just temporarily, it'll work fine. Anyway, that's the update for now. Thanks. Okay, well, here's where we're at. I reinstalled all the pipes for the injection. And it just requires a lot of patience. I actually, what really helped me, I should have taken more pictures. I've been concentrating on videos. I should be taking a lot more pictures along with the videos. But I actually made a diagram of all the parts and how they came off of the car in a notebook of mine. Which I used to use exclusively. This is the notebook, by the way. That's my Porsche 911. These are all my restoration projects. These are a CB500, a CB400, no, CB550, a CB350, a Yamaha YL1E, a Yamaha YDS3C. That was my Roundtail Spider, and this is my latest Spider. This was the restoration notebook I took. As I completed the projects, I tore the pages out, so I only have my last project, but anyway. I used to take copious notes. But anyway, here's the diagram that I made for the fuel injection pipes, and this came, here's the stud locations, and this was pretty helpful. Anyway, so I got all that back together. I put this evaporation thing back in. I think a couple of things I'm going to start to work on the timing. I'm going to replace the ignition points and condenser and the cap and rotor. And I filled up the injection pump with a half a pint of fresh oil. I did that by removing the barometric compensator and filled that up. So things are looking pretty good here. Things are in somewhat a state of order. I put the injection, the pulley cover back on. That was a little bit strange because that stud, I don't remember how that stud came on and off, but whatever, I think it'll work. The only other thing I'm thinking of doing is putting the exhaust manifold brackets back, exhaust manifolds back on, because I obviously don't want to install the brake components and clutch until so I have clear access to this area. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I do have to put oil in the engine. I have to put oil in the steering box. And so that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm going to continue to do my detailing of the I'm trying to get in position here. I'm going to continue to do some detailing under here. I did the other side. This side has not been done yet. Or actually I did a partial a few months ago. It's probably weeks ago now. I'm going to do some detailing in here, of course. I have to I'm going to replace the hoses to the brake calipers. Not the hard lines, of course, the soft lines, the rubber. And when I ordered from Classic Alfa, me like an idiot, I only ordered one of the fronts. So you need two, so I got another one coming in the mail, I think today. So I should be able to get a lot of this stuff done over the next couple of days, and get the car somewhat, maybe even back on its wheels. I got to do some research about the how to handle the rims. It's actually out at a shop, and they took the old tires off, which I'm going to be recycling somehow. I don't know what that actually means. But anyway, so things are looking pretty good. Well, what do you do on a beautiful spring day? Well, I can't think of anything better to do than to clean my gas tank. And I'm using oil flow and heat and a scraper. I scraped off the old Cosmoline, and I'm using heat to get down to the original finish, which is like this. That's very close to the original color. That's what we're shooting for when I repaint it. But the combination of heat and oil flow works really well. It takes off this Cosmoline. I'm going to have to clean this with acetone. Another thankless job. But as you can see, I scraped a lot of this off with the heater, with this scraper and heat gun, just to get through a lot of this. I mean, this stuff is really nasty. Anyway, so we're going to be hacking away at this for about an hour. Okay, well, here's the gas tank. It's cleaned up as much as I think I can go with it. So this was done with a combination of, well, I mean, getting it to this level of finish is a combination of using some evaporust. That was actually earlier. I used MEK to take off the, of course, you know, I continued from the heat treatment I did yesterday. The heat treatment was to melt the residual cosmoline that was on it. And then I used MEK to take off the residual cosmoline that was left off. MEK, well, wait a minute. Let me start this over. Okay, so I had cosmoline on it. I used heat and diesel to get off the most severe cosmoline. After I got it clean from most of the cosmoline, then I went over it with the MEK, the leftover MEK that I had, because it wasn't clean anyway. I went over with the MEK to get off everything else I could. So that left a pretty clean surface. Then what I had to do was I used an abrasive, I used my Dremel, my trusty old Dremel, the second most valuable tool in a workshop, with these abrasive wheels. This one is shot, but I had these abrasive wheels that I bought on eBay. This is eBay. I bought on Amazon. This is one of them. Let me see if I have. I think you get, these are the abrasive wheels you get on Amazon. They're cheap, and they come in different grits. I don't even know which grits are which. I think the red is the least aggressive and the most aggressive. This one's pretty darn aggressive. That might be the most aggressive. This one might be the least aggressive. You can tell by how soft or hard they are. Actually, this is probably the least aggressive. This, I think, is the most aggressive. This thing cuts. Well, anyway, I used a couple of those to get off some of the hard. Underneath here, it's an interesting finish on the tank. Of course, the tourney finish is all gone, but what I had was a little bit of surface rust on here. It's very subtle. It's all gone now, but it was very subtle. And I used the, you can see the scrape marks from the Dremel, especially in this area. That yellow is not rust, that's light. But you can see where I dremeled off some of this really very light surface rust. And there's still a little bit of residual gunk in there. That's actually burns from the welding. So I got down to that level of... but this thing looks, it's good enough. I'm gonna prime it today. And I'm gonna tape up some of these holes over here. I'm gonna prime it. And then get it ready for the silver coating. Then I'm gonna, the final silver coat, which is gonna be trying to replicate the original. I'm gonna reinstall the horns. I cleaned up use this plastic Novus plastic polish. I've had this bottle for about 53 years, and it's down to a little bit. I have actually a whole nother bottle, but I use that plastic polish on there, and boy, they come up really nice. Anyway, I'm going to be reinstalling these. There's only one way to go, because this one has 2 terminals, the other one has 1. I believe this is on the passenger side, this is driver's side. Anyway, it's interesting, there's a little inspection mark there. That's the tuner for the horn. Very interesting stuff. Anyway, well, here's the completed repainted gas tank. It came out really well overall. However, I had a couple little issues, and I'll try to explain it. When I was spray painting it, and I'll show you the paint I used. When I was painting it, the spray started, how should I say, it started pebbling on the surface. And I don't know, there was something about that spray can that just wasn't 100% right. So anyway, I got really annoyed as I was spraying, and I was actually gonna just scrap the whole thing and do it over. But I decided, so what I did was I wet sanded the overspray, if you want to call it. It was the dry spray. I wet sanded it off, and I got down to a pretty nice finish. Now, what happened though is in a couple of areas, like here, I blew through the finish. And a little bit over here, a little bit over there, and a little bit over there. But as I started looking at it, I said, you know what? That looks really original. I mean, are you going to see a perfect gas tank? No. I'm going to paint this with black epoxy. I'm going to paint all these fittings over here with black epoxy, as well as in there, to prevent that from rusting forever. But anyway, I kind of like that look. I mean, it looks original. You know, this is like a wear spot, which I think the original, I mean, it looks original, right? It's either that or I'd have to airbrush in that paint, because there's no way you can actually spray it out of a can and get a good finish. So I could airbrush it in. I could show you how I do the airbrushing. I actually transfer the paint. So let me go show you the paint. Let's turn the radio down. This is what I used. Krylon metallic silver. And I did a lot of research into the look of this paint to try to replicate the original. It doesn't look like this chrome at all. As a matter of fact, that was probably taken off of another can. But I bought this over at Michael's or whatever, metallic silver. And it's paint and primer, which I'm not like thrilled about that. But anyway, like I said, I wasn't thrilled about how it applied. I've never had that much trouble with a paint, but then again, my technique might not have been great. Anyway, so that's what's going on there. I'm debating whether I'm going to keep this or touch these in. You know what? I actually kind of like the authenticity of this. There's a little bit more than I bargained for in terms of these spots. Like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, on the bottom and everything else, this came out, well, it wasn't as, I also wet sanded this, but this is going to get covered with Cosmoline. Or, you know, some kind of, I'm going to apply a rust proofing, or, you know, one of those undercoating materials, just like the original. So that's not as critical. But anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and epoxy up these fittings, and then I'm gonna just think on it a couple of days and see whether or not I actually want to touch those areas in. I'm probably gonna leave it. I kind of like the authenticity of the look. It's imperfect, and that's Italian. All right, well, I got the distributor reinstalled, and I have to say there was a little bit of a trick to it. The trick is, of course, what I did is I created some marks, some reference marks. You can see them there, and you can see it up here. Those two reference marks. But I was able to line it up and get the cogs aligned, but it wouldn't sit flush. And then I started looking at the distributor and I figured out a solution. There's a gasket, which is really an O-ring, that sits at the base of the distributor. And what I was trying to install it with the O-ring on the distributor and mounting it as a unit. So I did that for an hour and it wouldn't line up. So then what I did is I took the O-ring off and I put the O-ring on the housing on the engine itself. And lo and behold, in like 45 seconds, I got the thing to sit down flush. That boss, those two mating surfaces between the engine block and the distributor itself, there shouldn't be any gap at all in there. And it only took like 30 seconds and the thing snapped right in, or press fit right in. So that's done. I'm going to be reinstalling the, I put the horns in, by the way, horns down there. I'm going to be putting the rotor on, and I'm also going to install the voltage regulator. All right, I'm going to get to that right now. All right, well, I've just finished setting the points. There's really no major gotchas here, although as I think I mentioned before, I'm reusing my old points. I cleaned them up on a file, was pretty meticulous about getting a very nice surface out of it, and I think these points are fine. One note about the condenser here, this condenser is a reproduction, of course, as almost everything is. And it's different than the original in that it's a two-piece. There's a bracket. You can see the outer bracket here. And the condenser can slide in and out of that bracket. I had to modify that bracket. I had to remove material against where the screw butts up against, see if I can get a good focus on that. With this, you can really hardly notice I had to take a Dremel. And I also slid it back because this wire is really long. So I'm going to tuck it down under there and attach it back up. The low tension lead goes through here, so I'm not going to attach that until I reinstall the distributor. But it's a Morelli S103BA. And these take what are called the curved set of points. They kind of look like Bosch points, but they're a little bit different. They have two pivot points. I think the Bosch only has one. See, there's a rear screw there, and that's an adjustment screw. That slot is for adjusting the gap. I set it to about 0.017, which is in the middle of the range. So I'll be reinstalling this a little bit later today. Alrighty, see you later.